Good afternoon. My name is John Arnold. I'm the my long title is I'm the regional director for Western Europe. In effect, I'm the sales guy looking after the team in UK and Ireland. Apologies, I'm in the fourth day of man flu, as my wife calls it, and most of our ladies call it. So I was coughing and spluttering earlier, and I will try to do my very best to stop coughing and spluttering during this presentation, but it feels like it's about 95 degrees in here at the moment, which it might well be. So, and the other thing is, I'm wearing a blue shirt. Anybody in this room who's got the same shirt on is a member of SimpliVity. Most of the guys here actually are not snake oil salesmen like me. They're actually solutions architects. So ask them a question, you'll get an honest answer. Isn't that right, lads? Yes. So, what I'm also going to attempt to try and do in the next 30 minutes is to give you a whistle-stop tour of why hyperconvergence is a good thing to look at. And I would say to you, even if you don't look at SimpliVity's version of hyperconvergence, and I actually think there is only one version of it, but we'll come on to that later, look at somebody's, because this is absolutely a different way of doing things and will give you massive payback in the future. This industry is going through massive disruption, as we all know. The reason Dell buying EMC is because the market is changing, and that is a defensive move. EMC had 45% of the storage marketplace. The storage marketplace is being consumed by hyperconvergence, which means lots of other things as well. So just please do look at hyperconvergence, even if you think I am a snake oil salesman, I'm too much like Donald Trump, to take this further, which hopefully that won't be the case. So, somewhere I have this switch here. A couple of things here. IT is stuck. This is giving you some context. Really, 50% of budgets are flat or down. Anybody in the room got more money this year than last year? Yeah, one person. Great. Take his name. We're going to talk to you. Fail for that one. That's fantastic. And you know, greater than 60% of mid-sized companies, which are most companies in this country, are not employing more staff because there's massive pressure. And you know, we're in London in a fantastic office building. If you were in the West End, you'd be paying something like 140 square foot for your office space, which makes, if there's a rubbish bin here, anybody selling rubbish bins, it must be really easy, because a rubbish bin, you know, it's going to sit on a space at 140 pounds worth of ground space, if you see what I mean. The point is, it's a very expensive place to keep people in place. That is why people aren't hiring like mad at the moment. And that's true in many other places. And also, there is a genuine skills shortage in the provision of infrastructure in this country. And a lot of companies involved in, say, the public sector are finding it incredibly difficult just to kind of keep staff, to keep the lights on. It's a real challenge. Anybody disagree with that? Anybody think it's easy at the moment out there? No? Okay. So, another really interesting aspect to this is IT engineers are IT engineers. They're generally not IT mechanics. Mechanics are really important, but engineers design things rather than fix things in general terms. An awful lot of IT engineers today are trying to keep the lights on. They're fixing things rather than designing things. And this is completely wrong in that only 20% of the time of an IT engineer is spent on innovation and new projects. The rest of it is about keeping stuff going. And what I wanted to show you is a way of doing things which will turn this on its head, so that you spend 20% of your time on trying to keep the lights on, keep the infrastructure going and managing, patching, all those kind of things, and 80% of the time in working out how IT is going to improve your business. If I can do 10% of that, then I've accomplished something today. And you know, the data problem, we all know this. The growth of data is enormous. I remember talking to a government department 15 years ago, and they were suggesting there was only 3 petabytes of data in the entire world. There are corporations today who, you know, that's a rounding error almost. So data is growing astronomically, but that's not a problem. Because we can provide that infrastructure. What the problem is the I/O gap, is the disk performance, and it's shrinking backup windows and more stringent RTOs and RPOs. Those are the big issues there. And one of the ways that someone put this to me not so long ago in terms of this kind of issue is back in the day when we just had gigabyte drives running at 750 RPM, that was a bit like supping beer from a pint glass through a straw. Today, our discs are running at twice the speed. So now we've got 2 straws to sup our beer. But we're supping beer from not even a barrel, we're sucking it from a lake. That is a problem in terms of accessing that information. And that's why we've seen such a fast rise of flash memory vendors and all the complicated nature of which one's right and what have you. So again, I believe we have a solution that helps to mitigate that kind of issue, because the best I/O you ever make is the one you don't have to do. We avoid the need for I/O. And I'll try and explain what I mean by that as I go along as well. So I'm really setting myself up for a fall here. But if I can't explain it, then one of the guys in the blue shirts will explain it, because they're much cleverer than me. So we now today have an accidental architecture. This is an architecture that was born in the 60s and 70s and carried over into the noughties. Basically, what it is a Frankenstein's monster of different parts that had to be stitched together to provide our infrastructure. From the days of amalgamating storage to VMs into the ability to consolidate data centers, which meant we needed WAN optimization, great stuff. I worked for Riverbed for 5 years back in the early part, in 2004 onwards, great company. They were there, as I say, to allow you to do that, and at the same time other companies like Convort and Diligent, whatever, were set up to ensure that the data you had was, you had some ability to back up and you had some kind of data protection regime. So all these kind of things came along, and then SSD, because of overcoming the beer problem that we all spoke about, and Cloud Gateway and SSD caching and all these kind of things. And a plethora of different, you try saying plethora with a cold, plethora of data protection apps there as well to ensure that we can get access to that data. So that was the accidental architecture that grew up over 30 years, post-mainframe. And we see why all these things happened, as I mentioned earlier. I won't go into this in terms of time, but this is very much like any corporate infrastructure. And I remember some time ago responding to an RFP from a finance company in the city. I can see their offices in here, but I won't mention who they were. And they had 20,000 workstations, and they sent us an RFP, and it said they had 16,000 servers, which we of course said it's not 16,000 servers. That's a mistake. It's 1,600 servers. When we got there, they actually sort of laughed at each other in their massive wood encased room, and said, no, actually, we probably think we've got 22,000 servers, which was amazing. 22,000 servers, and you've got 20,000 users. Anyway, mind-boggling. But it's kind of useful. So this is why we saw the growth of data center consolidation, all those kind of good things. And then, as I mentioned, other devices. So we know we have all of that kind of stuff there, and all that replication, duplication, and all those different processors and power supplies, all those kind of things. So what will you do? Your data is growing, your budget is flat or going down in many cases, staffing is a problem, and complexity is getting much greater. We've seen a similar kind of slide earlier. But what do you do? So our vision is simply this. Everything that is below this orchestration and management level, so everything above the VM layer, as it were, all of those products that we mentioned and solutions and those different panes of glass of management and those different courses one has to go on and those different support percentages one has to pay, all of that potentially can be removed. Because we believe that the best of both worlds, as we call it, in terms of getting enterprise capabilities, so all of those things an enterprise needs, together with cloud economics, so all the infrastructure below the hypervisor, and this is anywhere, this is public cloud, private cloud, robo, and we contend that robo is dead because with our technology it's not remote any longer. We allow the very, very full management of remote offices, so they're no longer remote. But we'll explain that as well in a second. On any x86 platform, can be powered by OmniStack, by our software solution. So our software solution simply is poured into UCS, off it goes, and it works. So what I'm explaining is simply the smarts here are in software, and one small little bit of an FPGA, a little bit of hardware that helps to do these things. And the net effect of this gives you potentially a return on investment of over 3 times. Now, everybody talks about these things, you know. My ROI, my TCO is massive. So I want to kind of explain as much as I can in the time I have how that all works. And if anybody has any kind of contentious, I don't believe that he is Donald Trump, whatever, please put your hand up and let me try and do Donald Trump on you. Let me try and do a Hillary Clinton or a Bernie Sanders on you. So the other thing I just wanted to explain is why, as I mentioned earlier, I talked about hyperconvergence. I actually really believe there is only one hyperconvergence vendor out there. There are lots of convergence vendors out here, but hyperconvergence is not about necessarily the hypervisor and converging. It is about removing virtually everything you need below that stack from your data center. That is what hyperconvergence is. So there are a lot of solutions out there which are convergence. And it is becoming a very cluttered marketplace with a lot of people saying, hey, I'm hyperconvergence too. Because there is some marketing noise out there. And some of those companies are simply putting, put it graphically, lipstick on the bulldog. They're making older technologies appear to be much, much more enticing. And some have some interesting things to say as well. And as I said to you earlier in my opening remarks, whatever you do, go and talk to some people and find out that there's a new way out here, but a new way of doing things. But I just wanted to give you a view in terms of what we think are the differences. So we had the legacy stack, and Chris mentioned some of this earlier. And then we had some of the leaders of convergence coming in from 5 years ago, who were able to, in effect, give you one throat to choke, one SKU. And in effect, what that said was, Mr. Customer, we give you a reference architect in 45 days' time, we deliver this to you. Great, made it much less complex. But one thing it didn't do was reduce complexity, because you've still got all the same panes of glass of management. And it certainly didn't reduce costs, because there's generally one more snout in the trough. I think that's a fair thing to say. So Convergence 1 was good, but it's now been superseded by other ways of doing things. And then some of the other vendors came along and said, you know what, you don't need to buy all of this stuff above this line in green. You don't need to buy the shared storage. You don't need LUNs and all that kind of stuff any longer. You don't need storage switches, or not so many of them, and you don't need all this service, because we will put that all into one device. And that's great, and that's incremental in its value, and it helps you scale and all those kind of things. But what it doesn't do is to address the issues below the line there. So all the backup issues, the WAN optimization, cloud gateway, all those kind of solutions, which are at least half of the cost and maybe more of the cost, and much, much more in terms of the complexity, if that makes sense. So in terms of delivering ROI, it is about 2 things. It's about CapEx, so do I have to buy all of this stuff, all of that stuff? And OpEx, how many skill sets do I still need to run my infrastructure? And if you need 5 or 6 different skill sets, then it's expensive, as we all know. Our vision is to give you all of the things that you need, the reason you buy a converged system, with the data protection, the efficiency, all of those things that an enterprise needs, so you can run all of your tier 1 applications on this technology. But to give you the cloud economics of convergence 2 boxes, where they're much cheaper, so they're simple, they're lower cost. And generally those technologies are used for tier 2 and 3 applications in VDI, and be able to deliver all of that into an environment, if this wants to carry out working, into environment that has the best of all those worlds, where just with our technology, and for some reason that's not doing what I wanted to do, but anyway. So with our technology, just on the 2U devices, you get all of that capability. And when I say one pane of glass of management, I was talking to someone earlier who had to leave. The key thing here is there is no SimpliVity skill you need to use. The only thing you need to be able to run all of this complex environment with industry-leading data protection is simply some vCenter skills. That's it. Hands up who knows a little bit about vCenter. Surprise, surprise. So you straight away are able to run this stuff. You don't need to take a driving test on SimpliVity, you already know it. So in terms of being able to reduce your OPEX, you just worked it out. In terms of saying, gosh, this is so difficult at the moment to retain and train staff because of all the pressures I have, you just need vCenter skills, and you have everything you need from a point of view of running this data center. And the point I'd make very briefly on this is, I mentioned data protection, which is often one of the biggest headaches that people have because they don't have data protection, they're not running a proper data protection environment. This comes free. This is just built in. Or, put another way, you can put in a data protection environment and you get a free data center, whichever way you want to look at it. But the point I make about this is, things like RTOs and RPOs of 10 minutes is standard for us. That is our bread and butter. And we guarantee that, and I'll talk about that in a second as well, a little later on. So this is best of breed. This is not compromising the capability you need in your enterprise. You get all of this out of the box. This is why it is unique and very, very different. Excuse me a second. So how do we do this? Very quickly, because where is the snake hole in this presentation? We do things, one of the things that makes us fundamentally different from any other vendor is we get to the data first and we turn data into metadata. So in a general environment, you get deduplication and optimization, all that kind of stuff happening all the time. It can be 10, 12 different instances in a moderate size data center. Because we get to it first, we in effect negate the need for any other device that is going to deduplicate your data. And we do this once and forever across all tiers of storage. Once and forever. So someone once said this stuff isn't rocket science. It's much, much more complex than rocket science. It's all about algorithms. But it's the way the algorithms actually allow you to do that to the data. So we hold metadata. Once we've seen a pattern of data, we don't have to see it again. So it makes it very efficient in both storing it and both in terms of how we move data from point A to point B. But also I mentioned about IOPS and not having to do IOPS. If you imagine you're in a world where everything has been deduplicated and is held as in metadata on flash memory, then if you've already written data once to a hard disk, you know it's there, you don't have to write it again. So just capture that thought for a moment. That is why this is so efficient using spinning disk and SSD, because we hold data, the components of data in metadata, and we never have to write it twice. So from east to west, you don't have to move the information once you know it's already there. North to south, the same thing. Okay? And again, appreciate that's a concept that is difficult to take on the fly when I'm gabbling away at speed with a blocked nose. Please, if you have any concerns about that, talk to one of the guys in the blue shirts. How am I doing for time, please? Because I can't. I'm a little I'm okay. Yeah, 10 minutes left. Perfect. So we do that, and we do this at the same time. I mentioned about the vCentricity, the fact that you just need to know a little bit about vCenter. And later on this year, if you're looking at Hyper-V, we'll be supporting Hyper-V. We love VMware, it's great, 60% of the marketplace, but everybody wants a plan B, just in case. So we will give you a plan B later on this year. But right now, this is VMware vCenter. So these devices, will allow you to globally federate them. They all speak the same protocol, the same language. They're moving the same metadata from point A to point B. So what that allows you to do, therefore, as a business case, is manage all of your remote offices, which no longer become remote offices, from a single point globally. It could be in the UK, it could be across Europe, it could be literally across the world. And if I have time, I'll tell you about some real business cases in customers in the UK, not in the US or somewhere else, but customers that we have in the UK who are doing these things right now, and companies who you'd expect to be quite conservative in their approach. Sometimes you get lucky and you find a customer's got pain and they have to trust you, and they trust you, and it works, and they buy more, which is great. And I mentioned the built-in data protection. So we will guarantee an RTO of 10 minutes, an RTO of 10 minutes. It can be much less than that. There's a lot of other great things there as well. Okay. We don't have time to go into too much there. And if anybody is really kind of interested in the concept of how this stuff really works, then one of the guys in the blue shirts will do a demo and show you how this works. Correct, guys? Are we able to do that? Luke's put his hand up. So Luke's checked he's got some internet connectivity and can do this kind of stuff. So why is this useful? You know why. Go to market faster, reduce your cycle time. We were talking about shadow IT earlier. One of the biggest threats to the security integrity of enterprises today is this: the fact that business units are not prepared to wait for corporate IT to deliver on time. Well, it depends on what on time means. They're not prepared to wait, so they either go and buy their own stuff, and literally will buy their own stuff, their own servers, their own SANs, I've seen, or they go to a cloud provider. And it breaks the whole kind of compliance issue in corporate IT. Reducing costs, everybody wants to save money, everybody wants to do more, everybody wants to be able to actually add real value to the business, rather than just doing the status quo, holding the status quo, and of course improve productivity. Okay, so a couple of things here in terms of where this can be used. There was a question earlier, can it just be used on one or two things? And these aren't in 1 to 10 in terms of 10 is the least and 1 is first, so just rank that way. Data center consolidation, so anybody who actually wants to be able to consolidate their entire data center can do that. You know, we started off as a data center consolidation business, and we branched out into easier things to do like VDI and Robo. But that's key. People are out there today running their entire infrastructures on our technology, and some people who you would think would be quite conservative. Barings Bank, Barings Asset Management, they're not a bank, they're an asset management business. They spent 18 months looking at this kind of technology because they're very conservative. And these days, very risk adverse. They have settled on using this for their data center infrastructure, and several others in the city, as you mentioned. Remote office, branch office. Disneyland in California runs on our stuff, supplied from Chessington, because Disneyland is actually owned by a British company. Sorry, not Disneyland. That's a really terrible thing to say. Legoland. Legoland is owned by a British. They actually are this particular company are the second largest entertainment or theme park business in the world, Merlin Entertainments. So the London Eye, Madame Tussauds, Sea Life Centres are all owned by Merlin, and strategically, they are rolling out this stuff to all of their sites. So when I say Legoland in California runs on our technology, Legoland in California runs on our technology, managed from Chessington, remotely deployed, set up, whatever. This is big time stuff for many organizations. Hosted cloud, one of the largest SIs in the UK, computer center, use this. They don't sell our stuff, they use it internally to provide managed services to their customers. Small companies who are growing really quickly, people who just want to improve their data protection environment, and so on and so forth. Test dev, DevOps, which means just I'm trying to get my software out into the marketplace faster and do lots more iterations on a daily basis or even hourly basis. DevOps, this is great. Anybody involved in software development here? If you are, then this is a great solution because we can clone vast amounts of data like that, and you can go and put that into a test and dev environment and play around in it. So lots of interesting solutions, and we run on a whole host of different UCS boxes, from small to medium to large. So you can run your smaller remote offices, you can run your large remote offices or smaller data centers to large data centers. And you can see lots of, in each device there's lots of cores, lots of memory, lots of capacity, and bear in mind that because we turn the data into metadata, we're very, very efficient with it, we can put in a huge amount of data into an existing environment. So just quickly, we are still a pre-IPO company. We were 3.5 years in development, which is very unusual for a startup. The reason why is because we wanted to run people's businesses on our technology, and therefore you have to get that right, and you don't just spend a year doing it. You spend 3.5 years to get it right before you get your first customers. Makes sense. Very well funded. And we are seeing massive, massive growth globally, and have actually about 700, I'm going to get corrected by Paul, who was out on new hire in Boston last week. How many? 763 employees, so growing quite quickly with lots of customers, and probably 1,000 customers now. Lots of them around the world, just pointing these out. Gap is an American company, but we won that in the UK. They're a European team. I mentioned Merlin, I mentioned Computer Centre, law companies, NHS, that's Blackpool and Clyde College, so big size, almost university size. South Bank down the road, big school. Jose Mourinho's son goes there, which is why somebody pointed out to me the other day, oh, that's interesting. I'm not that interested in football. Cambridge University, their press, they're the largest academic second largest academic press publisher in the world. They have sites all over the place. They're a big organisation, and so on and so forth. So companies that you know, you've heard of, and what have you. So just a little bit about who's interested in cloud and cloud economics and potentially going to the cloud or is already there. Just quick hands up. Okay. So generally, when you look at the cloud, you look at the cloud for a couple of reasons. The reason you want to stay on premises is because you want predictable performance. Cloud doesn't often give you predictable performance. It can be a little bit notchy sometimes. You might want to stay on premise because of data privacy. You can guarantee your data is safe, or as much as you can if it's in your own environment. And also it might be governance control, that you shouldn't be sending, particularly if you're in financial services, you can't send customers' data to a place where you can't send it, if that makes sense. It's got to be kept in certain regimes. If you're in the Cayman Islands, you might have to keep the information in the Cayman Islands. If you're in London, so on and so forth. Tough if you're looking at public cloud. On the other side, public cloud, it lowers the cost. Everybody agree with that public cloud lowers the cost? Last time I did this, actually, I was surprised how many people said, no, it doesn't. But the perceived wisdom is, yes, it does. So lower cost, flexibility for changing demand, yes, because if you're launching a new product, a new car, a new pharmaceuticals drug, and you've got a big splurge in terms of infrastructure needed to do that, then flexibility is great, and it should be fast and simple deployment. That's the different reasons for on-premises versus public cloud. I'm not going to go into this right now because I don't have enough time, but just wanted to mention the point here. So we've done some work with a couple of companies, with ESG and also Evaluator. And what is interesting about this is the scalability, the linear scalability of using 2 of our nodes, 4 of our nodes, and what have you. So you can scale very, very simply in terms of how many more VMs you use or more capacity you get. And also the ability to run those tier 1 applications. But the part I really wanted to make here right now is the perception has been that private cloud, sort of public cloud is cheaper. We used a company called Evaluator Group. Evaluator Group is well known for working as a consultancy in terms of TCOs for businesses. So an objective third party. And what we did in January, so a couple of weeks ago, is work out the differences in potential cost on using Amazon Web Services, and this is using probably the most expensive way of providing Amazon Web Services, because if you, let me rephrase that, using the cheapest way of using Amazon Web Services, not the most expensive. The most expensive way of using web services is this thing here called on demand, which is a bit like hiring a car for an hour. What we've evaluated this against is the 3-year upfront reserve, which is like hiring a car for a year, much, much cheaper. And what Evaluator, their summary on this was quite simply that when we're getting to somewhere like 206 VMs, we are 206 VMs. We are on a par with Amazon's Web Services in that configuration I just mentioned. When we get above that, when we're getting up to 515 VMs, we are at 20% less, 22% less than using Amazon Web Services at current prices. So that's kind of interesting, and that goes against the received wisdom. Now, there might be some very good reasons for going to Amazon Web Services. There might be some reasons for not going to off-premises, or maybe getting to a model that is hybrid. The point I'm trying to make here is, because we have these web scale economies here, because we lower the total cost of ownership, and because the OpEx goes through the floor, using this technology on your own premises with all of the great things that it gives you in terms of predictability and governance and security is something that the financial director will accept. And there's a lot of other soft costs in terms of the networking, getting those web services up and running that aren't always factored into the cost. So just a point I wanted to make in terms of why hyperconvergence is extremely competitive and should be considered in terms of the cloud environment. And there's a bit more information on that. So this is the cumulative costs for 515 VMs over 3 years, using those different Amazon menus there, from the 1 hour car rental to the yearly car rental or 3 yearly, against the cost that we have there. Now, it's easy for me to say this and present this. You've got to check the margins for the working out. So if anybody actually is interested in this and how we've arrived at this, these costs, we have this published. It's very easy to just work out a calculator, check prices to understand that this is correct and up to date. Okay. So changing the balance there. I appreciate I'm running out of time. How long do I have left? 1 minute, sorry. All right. So I normally talk far faster because I've got a cold in my throat. So I just wanted to say another thing about this as well. So we are a young company with 50 or 60 customers in the UK and hundreds in Europe and thousands across the world, but we're still a young company. We're partnering with Cisco here, so they're a much older company, so they're not daft, but the point is, and they wouldn't partner with us if this was risky, but to completely de-risk this for you, if you were to look at putting this technology into your environments, you might say, well, what's it going to do for me? And how do I know this is going to work? How do I know it's not Donald Trump up there telling me all the rubbish? The Mexicans who build a wall and all those kind of things. It's because of these kind of things that we can guarantee in terms of efficiency, protection, simplicity, management, availability. What we'll say is that we will guarantee, and this is in our EULA, this is, if we don't do this, we give you your money back. So nobody likes to give money back, so we are sure that this will work for you. In that, if you don't see 90% capacity savings across all of your storage, including backup, we'll give you your money back. If you can't protect your VM 60 seconds or less on average for local backup or restore of a 1 terabyte VM, we'll give you your money back. Simple, 3 clicks to backup, restore, clone or move a VM from a single console. If you can't do it in 3 clicks, give you your money back. Manageable, 60 seconds or less on average to create or update backup policies for thousands of VMs from a single console. If we can't do that, you can't do that, we can do it. If you can't do that, give you money back. And lastly, hyper-available. Add or remove a local remote simplicity system without downtime, without interruption, to local remote backups and without reconfiguration of backup policies. If we can't do that, we'll give you your money back. We guarantee this. We stand by our technology. This is why this is so, so different. And just lastly, as we talk about this, this is in terms of using our latest version, so you haven't got an old version you bought 3 years ago, et cetera, et cetera. The warranty is described in it, so this is all the bit you have to always say when you make these wild assertions, back it up by a little bit of legalese. And lastly, support is very important, because if you're using this kind of stuff, and I say to you, run your business on me, trust my company to run your business, you want to know that the support that we have is world class. Our support runs at the highest of industry metrics at the moment. I think it's like 9.6 out of 10 in terms of execution satisfaction. That's all kind of good, but the point that really matters here is we have 25 support engineers based in Cork, in Ireland. Why are they in Cork? Because that is the centre of the virtualization and storage industry. Dell, VCE, VMware, everybody's over there. So it makes there's a great pool of talent, and that helps us to protect your business. So, out of time, any questions? Now, they can be as difficult as possible, because if they are difficult, I'll just ask one of the guys in the blue shirts to answer. But any questions? There are no stupid questions, maybe just stupid answers, I don't know. But feel free to ask in the minus minute I have left. Okay, great. Well, if afterwards, when there's a few drinks and you're a bit more relaxed and whatever, speak to one of the guys in the blue shirts. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And just quickly before I hand over to Neil, just to wrap up the technical sessions. For those who don't know Focus Integration, we're one of Cisco's most trusted and successful UK data center partners. We're also Cisco's #1 mobility partner working within their cloud networking division. We've worked with Cisco for close to 15 years now and have some great customers who have worked with us for that amount of time, some of which are here today. So if we can have some time with you afterwards at the bar or introduce you to any of those customers, please let us know so we can take the conversations forward. In terms of follow-up procedures that we can do with you guys, we can have some WebEx sessions demoing the software. We can have face-to-face meetings. We've got labs set up with this technology in the labs, so if you actually want to use this technology, that includes SimpliVity, also Cisco's UCS platform and Cisco's Nexus platform. We've got labs so you can test drive that for a day. As John mentioned, we can run TCO papers, so we can actually come into your business and do an analysis on your network and run a TCO paper to see how hyperconvergence stacks up for your business as well. Luke also is here, so if you guys have got some time and you actually want to see this working, Luke can give you a quick 10-minute demo on the actual technology afterwards. As you've noticed, we've got some feedback forms, so please let us know how we've done today. It's really important that whatever information we deliver to you guys, it's interesting and relevant, so let us know how we've done today, and also let us know what you're thinking in terms of future strategies so we can actually hopefully get some more sessions like this done. Before I hand over to Neil, I'd like to thank all of our speakers, and if there are any questions, please let us know, and so if we can have a drink with you, that would be great. So I'll hand over to Neil.
Good afternoon, everybody. Does anyone need a stretch? It's quite high brain stuff. No, nobody needs a stretch. Well, the good news is it's only me between you and a drink. So hang in there, and we shall get to the bar as quickly as you can. Thanks to the speakers, I've learnt an awful lot about hyperconvergence. I knew absolutely nothing about it earlier. I feel now quite intelligent. I can assure you my presentation won't be technically challenging at all. I'm just going to share some of my experiences with you. I feel a little bit of a fish out of water, I suppose, after the first three speakers. But if anyone does have an immediate and fairly simple question for me during my presentation, please just stick up your hand and I'll do my best to quickly answer it. I remember a couple of years ago, I was doing a talk at the British Legion, and a chap stood up at the end mid-talk, and he said, I've got a question. Are you clinically insane? So none of those, please, but we'll see, possibly. So I'm a business advisor, coach, and trainer, but I want to tell you a little bit about my story, just to liven things up. When I was a young lad, I had three major ambitions in my life. I was kind of from 12, 13 onwards. These were developing, and really very passionate ambitions. The first was to join the Royal Marines. The second was to make some money. And if I'm totally honest, I didn't no clue how I was going to make some money, but I knew I wanted to make some money, principally, I think, to be able to live in a nice house for my family, which I obviously hadn't got age 13. And the third and final key life ambition that I had was to climb Mount Everest. Now, I had three fairly major problems. The first is that I was a fairly sickly child. In fact, I was go so far to be honest with you and say I was a patient at Great Ormond Street, that wonderful child's hospital. I will spare you the details of my issues. Suffice to say, I spent a good few years being attended. I also had, again, being very open and honest, I would describe my academic career as challenged. For example, when I was taking GCSE maths, no doubt you guys got A star. Well, I was at the other end of the scale. I got a U, which is the lowest, ungraded, so not great. One of my teachers wrote a report about me. It said, and I quote, "Neil is trying very hard, but achieving very little." I very nearly burnt down the science lab with a bad magnesium experiment that went wrong. And I was back-yeared, which meant I had to do 1 year a repeat, leaving all my schoolmates going up a year, which wasn't great. So, and the third thing, I suppose, is that I kind of felt during the early part of my career particularly that I was being shat upon from a large height. No great feeling, I can assure you. Summarised by this excellent cartoon. Against all surprises, all better judgment from headmasters, I did manage to pass Maths O-level with a C on the third attempt. And somehow or another, I managed to get an opportunity to do selection for the Royal Marines. And after about a year of quite hard work, I have to say, and learning all sorts of new skills, not like hypervergence, of course, but parachuting and GPMG, machine gun, and blowing things up. They presented me with one of these berets, a green beret, which is the mark of a Royal Marine Commander, and I was delighted. That was one of my really early young ambitions in life. So I was really pleased. Things seemed to be going quite well at last. Unfortunately, about a year later, my dad died, and the wheels came off the bus. I lost focus, I lost my concentration, and eventually the commanding officer called me into his office. He said, "Neil, it's not looking good." And he asked me to resign my commission in the Royal Marines, which was a big blow, massive blow. So I thought I'd try life ambition number 2, which was making some money. I bought myself a sharp pinstripe suit. There's a couple of nice pinstripe suits in the crowd, and still the rage. And I became a salesman. Normally a door-to-door office equipment salesman, moved into construction and worked for 3 different companies. The first, unfortunately, the owner decided to defraud HMRC. Before he was banged up, committed suicide in his Rolls Royce with a gas pipe. The company went down, I lost my job. Second job, the directors of the company were quite keen on golf and fast cars, spent all the money on that, and the company folded. I lost my job again. And the third one was very disappointing. It was with quite a large construction company, and I was given the role after volunteering for free, like a sort of voluntary 2 weeks just to test the waters and show them what I could do. I was offered a full-time job, 18 months. The company went from 1.8 million to 18 million. That's right, 1.8 million to 18 million turnover in 18 months. I thought I was doing quite a good job, till I got called in and was fired again. I later discovered that the boss wanted to give my job to his best mate. So I decided to have a go at option and lifestyle number 3 ambition, which was to climb Everest. I learnt myself how to climb, went around the world, climbing some interesting peaks, and I found an opportunity to go to Everest. Just 2 of us joined an international team. This was in '96. And when this picture was taken on the 9th of May, the evening of 9th of May, it's about 6 o'clock in the evening, the worst storm in 100 years was about to hit the mountain. And it took us 40 minutes to put a tent up in that white space there. It was pretty tough, but not as tough for the people who had summited that day and were struggling to get back down to this very location, base camp. So it was a pretty tough time. Sadly, 8 people lost their lives. Many people got injured with frostbite and so forth. And it was pretty traumatic 48 hours I spent at this location. So things really weren't looking too good. And I suppose I felt a little bit like the bloke who owned this desk and chair. And I suppose I really needed to find the ingredients to success. What the hell were they? And I suppose over the course of the next few years, the odd decade here and there, by learning from other people, testing and adjusting, and really experiencing for myself what works and what doesn't work, I think I've at least uncovered some of the critical factors that certainly have helped me, and hopefully you'll find some resonance with them. So the first one is motivation. And for me, motivation is really important, particularly 2 aspects of motivation. One, the vision. And for me, that's the what. What is it that we're doing? And number 2 is the purpose. And of course, that's the why. And if you have those two things in place, then motivation generally follows. You know what you're doing and why you're doing it provides good motivation. So for example, in this picture here, just a couple of summers ago, a friend of mine, John, another John, we decided to attempt to paddle across the Solent in a bathtub. So that was the what. The why, well, nobody had done it, and we wanted to find out whether it was possible. And yes, so we had the motivation. 4.5 hours, in case you're wondering. Narrowly missing this rather large ship in passage. Of course, leadership is really important, and the Marines and the military do really elaborate on the leadership front from a strong perspective. But it's really, for me, it's really clear, whatever walk of life we're in, IT or whatever, if we can create as leaders, I think, a compelling and inspirational picture of the future, kind of whatever happens, whatever the disasters that befall us, the obstacles in the way, then I think we can persuade people to follow us. And that, of course, ultimately is what leadership is all about. And so learning the skills of leadership for me was really important. And even to the extent of persuading city people here who'd never been on an expedition to join me on a mission to go to the South Pole skiing, take 5 weeks off work and pay me £40,000 to help facilitate it. I think you do need some leadership skills, and it does work. That's, in fact, the South Pole. A very skinny pole with a rather cheap mirror ball on it. Having spent all that money, you'd have thought they'd give you a little something better to celebrate with, but there we are, that's it. Strategy. Now, of course, strategy you'll know all about as business people. It's, of course, a plan for obtaining a major result. And I remember President Eisenhower, he said, a plan is useless, but planning is indispensable. Which, of course, I think what he meant by is you don't just stick with the original plan, it's going to have to change. And I think that's, in many respects, what we've been talking about this afternoon. And it reminds me of a little trip we did around the world, which required an awful lot of planning, a lot of strategy. Was to play the 8 most extreme golf courses within 1 calendar year, raising money for various charities. And it was the hottest, the coldest, the most northerly, the most southerly, the highest, the greatest, the toughest, etc. All around the world in a very tight time frame. We got to Alaska here, playing the coldest round, -27. And unfortunately, our red and orange coloured balls just didn't cut the mustard. What I'd failed to appreciate in this very light snow was that you hit the ball and you lost it. Can anyone think of the solution, the plan that we came up with to overcome this situation? Nice idea, but no. You'd have taken 100 hours, probably 100 days to finish the round, but nice idea. Anybody else got any other ideas? GPS tracker, that could have worked, yeah, but we didn't have time to do that. This was a next day solution requirement. Okay, so we retired. We called it quits for losing too many balls. We went to the pub and we scratched our heads. We came back with the idea and we worked through the night by drilling a little hole in each of our remaining golf balls, mostly probably about 80 or so of them left. And we siliconed or super glued in a 3-foot length of red cotton. So you stood over the ball, whacked it. I never great at golf. I hit it a few yards. But when the ball was disappeared, but what you did see against the white snow and the fading light was the 3-foot length of red cotton. Dug away, found your ball, struck it again. We finished our round and finished the challenge. So planning is, of course, very important. Now, I think innovation is, this is all about innovation today, so I'm delighted to say that for those of you like me who are not feeling quite as intelligent as others, that for me, innovation can be achieved by anybody, even with somebody who got U in Maths O-level. But it is quite critical. You don't have to be a scientist or kind of understand in intricate detail this hyperconvergence stuff right to the nth degree. You can take some existing technologies, some existing ideas and be entrepreneurial and innovative. And if nothing else, do something a little bit different. So this picture is last summer, and it's a bunch of people playing polo on penny farthing bikes. Now, I didn't invent penny farthing bikes, 1860, and I didn't certainly invent polo, but bring the two together, a little bit of difference. And on our first outing, we've attracting 12,000 odd people spectating. Okay, it was at Cowdrey Park on Gold Cup Day, but it got into the Times. So not a bad bit of publicity, just by being a little bit different or innovative. Communication, of course, incredibly important. And I do think throughout my career, I do believe that a timely, an honest and careful one-to-one chat with somebody will resolve most issues. And I was working in my day job as a trainer with a group who patently weren't able to communicate with each other. I was scratching my head wondering what on earth I should do with this team. So I took them to the Navy Centre, where they have a sinking ship simulator. And let me tell you, as soon as they were in there, briefed obviously and trained, and the water was rising, what do you think happened? They started talking to each other and communicating, and a build-up of trust in a short space of time. They were going to get pretty scared and pretty wet and uncomfortable had they not, but they did, and that's what happened. Communication, very, very important. So, determination. I don't need to tell you guys that determination is highly important. But I will tell you that this chap here epitomised for me a lovely story. Glenn Shaw, a friend of mine, sadly no longer with us. His ambition in life was to see Everest. He was never going to climb it because he spent his life in a wheelchair with brittle bone disease. But he did want to see it. And he organised his own expedition a few years back. And unfortunately, his helpers weren't paying attention. He fell off in his wheelchair off the path and broke his legs, both his legs, in 8 places. Terribly agonizing scenario. Helicoptered off. But 2 years later, just 2 years later, he and I and a willing team helped him realize his dream. What courage to go back 2 years later after that. And not only that, we managed to get him a world record for the highest wheelchair ascent in the world, 20,000 feet overlooking Everest. Of course, team spirit is really important as well. This is, I think, number 7 of my 8 factors for success that helped me and I'm sure has helped you. So if you get team spirit right, and I wouldn't say it's easy. You know, it does take time. It takes trust, development of trust, skills development, and also training. You wouldn't expect these guys to paddle across a river with a loaded automatic machine gun with enemy in the vicinity without doing any training. But for me, team spirit leads to high-performing teams, and it's as simple as that. If you want your team and the organisation that they're attached to really high-performing, you've got to grab this team spirit and make that happen. And then finally, resilience. Just like Glenn Shaw mended his broken legs and he got back in the game. And I think it's really important. We have to in all stages. I remember one of my jobs, and in fact my company, we did a project, a commercial interiors fit out of a restaurant near Birmingham. And unfortunately the guy decided that he didn't want to pay. We were quite a small 10 million turnover business. Normally would have crucified the business, but we stuck to it. We didn't give up. We showed resilience and we traded out of the problem. I will tell you, the guy never pays to defraud and be a thief. He committed suicide 4 years later. So here's the summary of what I think for me has really helped me from that disastrous start in life, losing all those jobs, getting booted out of the Marines, and failing to climb Everest. Kind of really has helped steer me towards hopefully better times. And if anyone wants a copy of this, I'm very happy to share it with you by email. You can stick it up on your fridge. There's my card and a leaflet there under the screen should you want to contact me, and I'll happily email it to you. So if there's one project that I could share with you in a 4-minute stretch that depicts 8 of those success factors, it'll be this one. It's a flying car mission. A friend of mine designed me a flying car about 7 years ago, and I wanted to make sure that we did a really dynamic road test drive, if you like. So we went, I organised 12 of us. We went from London to Timbuktu, crossing the Sahara Desert. Here's a 4-minute video snapshot. What I'd like you to do is think about, and you will see 8 of those factors in this short 4-minute video. You'll also see when somebody is flying across the Straits of Gibraltar, a very scared man.
An ex-Marine officer and SAS soldier, Neil has led expeditions all over the world.
It was my idea to do a journey from London to Timbuktu, really to provide a maiden flight for this aircraft and car. We've come across a little bit of a stumbling block with the Civil Aviation Authority. We don't have permission to fly in the UK just yet and across the Channel, sadly.
Neil and his expedition head for Spain.
We still haven't really flown this machine. Frankly, we don't know whether it's going to work or not. You know, it is very different to flying a plane and a helicopter. I mean, it is an extraordinary piece of equipment.
I come off the power and I'm sinking along, but we landed it.
This is a really serious mission for any aircraft, let alone one that's a car about to take off on a beach in gusting 30-knot winds.
That was really scary. It was uncontrollable. I was penduluming out towards the sea at about 50 foot. At one stage, I climbed out to jump out. I would have lost the car and at the end of the expedition. I'll give it one more takeoff and see how she feels. I head-butted the windscreen. The steering column on the wheel snapped and I burst a tyre. Apart from that, she was fine. What are you worrying about?
Neil Lawton is the first man ever to fly across the Straits of Gibraltar in a car. The expedition leaves Nuadhibu, leaving paved roads, and any semblance of civilization behind them.
You just had to look left and right, and you'd see destroyed, burnt out and blown up vehicles.
We're just negotiating to buy a goat so that we've got some food. This is a life, isn't it? Popcorn and a goat.
We're just about to set off into the middle of the Sahara Desert. Not a great time to be getting the spanners out, to be honest. Pretty sorry state. Lobbed it on the back of Toby's truck. We still had a fair bit to go to reach our destination.
Oh, this is looking fantastic. It's a good shape.
I like your optimism about it. 14, 15, 16. Still possible.
I was going to push the bloody thing to Timbuktu if I had to.
Well, my friend. No, not Timbuktu. Yes, we're here.
Right, where do we get a beer around here?
I hope you enjoyed that. That was taken. Thank you. That was short clips from a Channel 4 documentary called Lunatics, I think, something like that. Where do we leave off? I had been booted out of the Marines, unfinished business, ladies and gents, age 20, early 20s. I decided to get fit. I had that motivation. I had a plan, and I was going to be determined and resilient. I decided to run 70 miles a week, every week, for 6 months. I think my maths is correct, and you've learned earlier maths is not great, but those of you who want to do the math, I think it's about 70 marathons in 6 months. And boy, was I fit. I then put myself through SAS selection. And after a year or so, it wasn't green, but it was sandy coloured. And I was really proud again to wear a 20-pound beret on my head. And The regimental motto, who dares wins. 12 years service, started as a trooper, lowest rank in the British Army. 12 years later, retired as a captain. Lots of fun in between. Number 2, after 3 failed attempts at being employed, I decided to start my own company. A construction company, commercial interiors, design, build furniture. This was one of our breakthroughs, winning a contract for Rolls-Royce and building the interior of all their 10 buildings down in Goodwood in Sussex. I think that's me scratching my head wondering how on earth we were going to do it. The company was reasonably successful, built up over a number of years, bigger and bigger projects, roughly 40 million turnover towards the end of the journey, and employing many hundreds of people. And I felt proud. We won a contract with a competition of 46 construction companies, all the biggest firms in the land, for BAA's headquarters project at Heathrow. We won it and we delivered it, 20 million quid. At that point, shortly thereafter, a large PLC company came knocking on the door and wanted to take my business away from me. I was delighted. They've still got it. Good for them. But it did mean that number 2 kind of was there. Still a bit more work to do, I think. But I did manage, before selling the business, to build my family home, which I can assure you my kids enjoy still to this day. I want to finish by telling you what happened with number 3. If you remember, that was to climb Everest, my schoolboy ambition. 2 years after the disaster in '96, where so many people lost their lives and I endured 2 horrible days and nights, 8,000 meters, what they call the death zone, I was back with a young, motivated team, not hugely experienced, but there were some other qualities that they had that you may see in the following story. By the way, we were it's quite a tense place, Everest. Has anyone climbed Everest that I didn't recognize in the room? No. It's quite a tense place, psychologically, physically. And we were just going for tea with the Americans, who were ultra serious and ultra competitive and so forth. So just to lighten the mood somewhat. So we went in our old school ties, silly hats and boxer shorts. It was quite good fun. Anyway, the plan was to, after a 10-day trek or so to base camp, 17,500 feet, to go through the Khumbu Icefall, which is quite a tricky stretch of glacier. And only 2 years ago, tragically, 16 Sherpas lost their lives in an avalanche somewhere up here. You get to Camp 1, you're knackered, you come back down, you've dropped a bit of kit off, you've acclimatized somewhat to that height, and then you've got to do it all again, all the way back up. 4 miles of the western Khum, to give you some idea of the distance and scale, 21,000 feet. Drop your kit, acclimatise, spend a night, come all the way back down, base camp. All the way back up again, same old process, up to Camp 3, and back down, all the way down the valley, rest, eat as much as you can, recuperate, back up. You're physically wasting away. The idea then is you're ready for your summit bid. You wait for the weather and you go all the way through the camps to Camp 4. This is where I was at the storm 2 years earlier, 8,000 meters, Camp 4, also what's called the South Col. And it's then a 12-hour climb to get to the South Summit, the Hillary Step and the main summit. That's the plan. Every 12 seconds, something keeps you awake. An avalanche, a rock fall, some movement in the glacier. It's not a very comforting place. But thankfully at 3 o'clock you normally start your day. So there's not an awful lot of the night to enjoy in comfort in your sleeping bag. Off you go. Over the crevasses of the Khumbu Icefall, quite a scary prospect for those with vertigo. The Sherpas are brilliant. They put lots of ladders together. You cross the ladders with your boots and crampons. Occasionally this is what happens and this is what you're trying to avoid, which means you're walking as quickly as you can. But this means if I'm in the icefall and I'm heading to the back of the room, it will take me 3 minutes to get there, at best effort. An ex-Royal Marine. 3 minutes to get to the back of the room. That's what the lack of oxygen in the air is doing to you. And the pressure of something like this happening is quite intense. You do it as quickly as possible. And it's quite a relief when you do get to 19,500 feet, Camp 1. And you've then got the prospect of all these, the 4-mile walk to Camp 2. Above Camp 2 is Camp 3, of course, and this is based on the Lhotse face, the 4th highest mountain in the world. And it's a pretty steep, shiny and forbidding place. You can see spindrift and so forth. It's quite a tense place. Not a place for kind of beginners, and certainly not a place for the light-hearted. It's quite a serious business. After 8 hours climbing to Camp 3, you've got to dig out your tent. There's avalanches that come down here. You don't want to be swept away with it. So you spend 3 hours digging a level platform for your tent, hoping that you're tucked in nice and tight. I take this picture about 7 o'clock in the morning. It's the start of a day. Camp 2's there. We've walked the 4 miles up to Camp 2 from Camp 1 and base camp. And this is your ice axe. A guy gets out of this tent here, and I wave good morning, say hello, and he pads out here. There's something wrong, but I can't put my finger on it. And sadly, too late. It transpires that he forgets to take, or can't be bothered to take his ice axe for his early morning ablution. He doesn't put his boots on, he doesn't put his crampons on, and I hear a horrible sound, which is a man sliding down the 50-degree ice face with his trousers round his ankles. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. No place to make a silly decision and an error. You make your way up the Lhotse face, you turn left over the Geneva Spur, and you're making your way to the South Col, Camp 4, which is there, the scene of the disaster, and up here, the route up to the balcony, south summit, main summit, slightly out of view. Here's a picture climbing up the southeast ridge. There's Camp 4, the tents down there behind the knee. And we've just basically come up this nice, easy snow slope, starting to get a little bit steep up to the south summit. And at this point, things going pretty well, feeling pretty good. Fantastic view. This is the 5th highest mountain, Makalu, starting to look, thankfully, a little bit smaller. And you know you're getting close. There's even Lhotse, the 4th highest mountain, looking a bit small. I think that might be the summit there. You get to the south summit, so we've climbed up this little shadowy ridge up to the south summit. One of my Sherpas, fantastic guy, sat here looking up, back up to the summit, and he is sat on the top of that nodule there, which is the south summit. Rob Hall from 96 sadly lost his life just here. And you can see the footsteps running up the southeast ridge to the base of the Hillary Step, named after Sir Edmund Hillary, of course. It was at this point, about here, that I turned round and my climbing partner, Mick, wasn't with me. Hell. Had to turn back. Nothing for it. Team spirit, remember? Mick was in a bad way. He collapsed in the snow. There was one thing for it. I had to evacuate him off the mountain with the help of my Sherpas, 2 of them. We tied a short rope. The Sherpa volunteered to take him down the mountain. I was supervising from behind and above, steering this way and that way. At some point, Mick lost consciousness on his feet, staggering about, took the Sherpa by surprise, and 2 of them, 3-foot rope between them, started falling down the couloir above base camp. 300-foot fall would normally have killed most people. Unbelievably, both survived. Mick was in a pretty battered state. I thought I'd show you a picture. That's him, obviously, before the action. What he looked like kind of after that horrible fall. Just checking to see if you're still awake. Very nearly time for beer. Don't worry. Terrible decision to make. I'd had 3 attempts to climb Everest at this stage now. What the hell to do? Determination, resilience. Nothing for it. The Americans, they love a terrible story, don't they? It was persuading me. It's in 50 years, Neil, nobody has been to the summit or the South Summit, let alone done a 4-day rescue and go back up the next day to try and attempt the summit. No, you won't do it. You'll die. A couple of pints of asparagus soup, a couple of Mars bars, and I was back up on the hill the next morning at 3. We made our way up the valley again, familiar territory by this stage. And about 5 days later, thankfully, we were climbing up the famous Hillary Step with just a couple of 100 meters to go to the summit of Mount Everest. I'm going to just show you a 1-minute video that I took. It's not HYPERVERGENCE quality, but it'll give you an idea for those who are just thinking they might be strong enough to climb Everest, what it might be like.
We're sitting here in this shitty little tent that's got holes in it at 8,000 metres. We're already in what they call the death zone, which doesn't exactly inspire one with confidence.
So my summit partner was young Bear Grylls, 23-year-old young lad. He became the youngest Briton to summit the mountain, kept the record for about 10 years. And you'll see I took a little flag with the regimental motto, "Who Dares Wins." And I'd like to leave you with one thought. I would encourage you to live a life and live a business life of who dares wins. Suffice to say, there may be the odd stumble, obstacle and oh dear me moment along the way should you choose to adopt that strategy. As I remind myself of my escapade attempting to run the bulls in Pamplona a few years ago. Thank you very much for listening.
Been a really good afternoon. Folks have done a great job. Great to have the chaps from Simplicity here this afternoon. It's very hard to accommodate for the audience, who are both technical, business decision makers. The content's been brilliant. And where else? We're at the top of the Shard. Probably one of the best places in London to host an event. Great to hear some feedback from some of the customers here this afternoon. And also we had Neil Lawton here this afternoon, who's flown a car over the sea and all the way to Timbuktu. And also has climbed Everest several times and once made it to the summit.
Just had a great day here. There's nothing better than a room with a view and some really interesting customers. The room was actually bursting. If we'd had any more, we wouldn't have been able to fit in there, which is fantastic.
The event today was really good to see and understand about hyperconvergence and how potentially that can change the architecture in which we're looking at in the future. I think Focus Integration did a very good event, very good speakers, and good real-life experiences.
The speakers were really good. It was quite interesting to see what Cisco was saying, and the last speaker and his adventures out in the desert and on Mount Everest was fantastic. So I really enjoyed his stories.
I would absolutely recommend it to other clients and other customers at the airport to come and see the event.
No, they've nailed it. Really good job. Thoroughly recommend them to any customer looking for a trusted partner.